It was an autumn morning in Manhattan, and the golden sunlight reflected off the towering windows of the Willard, one of the city's most luxurious hotels. Inside, the hallways adorned with plush carpets and crystal chandeliers concealed a truth that even the most observant guests could never imagine. The hotel's owner, Henry Walker, was not the distant, unapproachable businessman everyone believed him to be. That morning, Henry, a man in his early 40s with neatly combed brown hair and ever-watchful eyes, decided to execute a plan he had been considering for weeks. He donned the simple uniform of a housekeeper and disguised his face with ordinary glasses and a fake beard. In this way, he became Mark Haynes, a new and inexperienced employee. If you want to understand the heart of a business, you need to listen to those who truly keep it running, he told himself, adjusting the hat of his uniform in front of a discreet bathroom mirror in the back of the hotel. Henry had always trusted his management team, but he felt that something was slipping through his grasp. There were rumors of power abuse, neglect towards employees, and even financial misconduct. He wanted to discover who his true allies were and identify the problems firsthand. In the service area, the atmosphere was entirely different from the luxury of the suites. Narrow hallways and shelves stocked with cleaning supplies shared the space, with hurried employees. Henry was greeted by a supervisor named Linda, a middle-aged woman with a calculating gaze and a stern voice. "Mark, right? We don't have time for formal introductions," she said curtly, handing him a cleaning cart. "Your first task is on the 10th floor. Don't disappoint me." Henry didn't have a chance to reply before she walked away. Grabbing the cart, he took the service elevator, reflecting on the completely different world he had just stepped into. On the 10th floor, he began his work clumsily, tripping over the mop and knocking over a bottle of disinfectant. Then he heard a light and warm laugh. "Let me help you," said a young woman wearing an identical uniform. She bent down to pick up the fallen bottle. "First days?" "Yes, is it that obvious?" Henry asked with an awkward smile. "Don't worry, we all started the same way. I'm Emma Carter." Emma had a genuine smile, blue eyes that seemed to brighten the darkest hallways, and an aura of kindness that contrasted sharply with the tense work environment. She began showing him tricks to clean rooms faster, speaking about the hotel's daily routines with a candor that surprised Henry. "Some people here are great, but others, well, let's just say they don't care much about those working behind the scenes," she said while changing the bedding in one of the suites. Henry felt a pang in his chest at her words. He watched Emma with curiosity, impressed by her dedication. She seemed to be there for more than just the paycheck. At the end of the shift, as they returned to the break room, Henry saw something that unsettled him. Linda, the supervisor, was harshly reprimanding a young waiter in front of everyone, calling him incompetent over a trivial mistake. No one dared to intervene, except Emma, who tried to de-escalate the situation. "Linda, it was just a small oversight. I'm sure he'll be more careful next time," Emma said firmly, yet with unyielding kindness. "Mind your own business, Emma," Linda snapped, her harsh tone casting a heavy silence over the room. At that moment, Henry realized that his decision to infiltrate the hotel's daily operations would not only expose administrative issues, but also challenge him to question his own priorities. He didn't know it yet, but that encounter with Emma would mark the beginning of a transformation that would forever change his view of what truly mattered in life. Henry couldn't get the events of his first day out of his mind. For years, he believed he ran an exemplary hotel, but the interactions he witnessed with Linda and Emma had opened a crack in the Willards' perfect facade. The next morning, Henry arrived early, still disguised as Mark Haynes. The employee cafeteria was nearly empty, except for Emma, who was reading something while sipping a cup of unappealing coffee. "Good morning," Henry greeted, trying to sound natural. "Good morning, Mark. Did you sleep well after your trial by fire?" she teased, smiling. Henry sat down next to her, seizing the opportunity to start a conversation. "You seem to enjoy working here, despite the challenges," he said, choosing his words carefully. Emma closed her book, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "It's not easy, but I need this job. Besides, I've met some amazing people who make it bearable." Before Henry could ask more, The cafeteria door swung open, and Linda entered with her usual look of disapproval. She walked across the room without saying a word, but her presence seemed to chill the air. Emma sighed quietly. Has she always been like this? Henry asked in a low tone. Linda? Always. She doesn't make it easy for anyone. But the real problem comes from higher up, Emma replied, glancing around quickly as if afraid of being overheard. The general manager, Mr. Donovan, ignores everything. As long as the numbers look good, he doesn't care about the issues. This information caught Henry off guard. He had always trusted Donovan to lead with integrity, but Emma's words hinted at a different reality. As the days went by, Henry delved deeper into the hotel's daily operations. He discovered that Emma, besides being dedicated, often helped colleagues facing difficulties. A waiter struggling financially, a housekeeper who was ill and needed her shift covered, Emma was always there. One day, during lunch, Henry found Emma in the break room organizing a box filled with clothes and supplies. What's this? He asked, curious. A campaign I run for employees in need, Emma explained. Some are going through really tough times, so I gather donations to help. Henry was impressed. Don't you think this should be the administration's responsibility? Emma let out a dry laugh. That would be great, but it's never happened. So I do what I can. No one here has time to wait for miracles. Those words echoed in Henry's mind. He knew he had more than enough resources to transform that reality, but as Mark, all he could do was observe. That afternoon, while working in a suite, Henry saw something that alarmed him. Linda was speaking with Donovan in one of the hallways. She spoke in a low voice but gestured aggressively. Henry tried to approach discreetly, pretending to adjust the cleaning cart. We can't keep going like this. These employees need to know their place, Linda was saying. Donovan sighed, visibly annoyed. Look, Linda, do whatever you need to, but don't let this reach Mr. Walker. If he finds out... Henry stepped back before they noticed him, but his suspicions were confirmed. Something was deeply wrong at the hotel, and he was determined to uncover the whole truth. Later, while cleaning another suite, Henry noticed a folder left on the desk. Opening it, he found performance reports and employee complaints. What shocked him the most was a list of names marked as non-essential. He recognized several of them, including Emma. So, this is how they treat the people who keep this place running, he murmured to himself. The sound of footsteps made him quickly close the folder. Emma appeared at the door, holding a basket of clean towels. Everything okay in here? She asked, noticing Henry's concerned expression. Yes, just thinking about how busy this place is, he replied, trying to hide the folder behind the cart. Emma looked at him curiously, but didn't press further. Yeah, it never stops here. Come on. We still have the entire floor to finish. That night, as he made his way home, Henry reflected on everything he had learned. He needed to act, but how? Revealing his true identity now would ruin his chance to fully understand what was happening. But what concerned him most was Emma. He knew she was a key figure in the dynamics of the place. Her kindness kept other employees grounded, but the non-essential list indicated she was in the crosshairs of something much bigger. Henry decided he needed to gain even more trust from Emma and the other employees. It was the only way to uncover all the secrets buried beneath the Willards' false shine. In the days that followed, Henry intensified his efforts to fully immerse himself in the world of the Willards' employees. With every shared task and conversation, he grew closer to Emma and the other workers, who slowly began to see him as one of their own. One morning, while adjusting the curtains in a presidential suite, Emma walked in holding a stack of towels. "Mark, you got a knack for that," she teased, watching Henry meticulously smooth the fabric. "Hidden talent," he replied with a relaxed smile. For the first time in years, he felt at ease in his own hotel. But the calm didn't last. As they stepped into the hallway, raised voices echoed from the service elevator. Approaching cautiously, they found Linda berating an older maintenance worker whose uniform was worn and stained. "I don't want excuses, Harold. If you don't fix this by the end of the day, pack your things," Linda snapped sharply. Harold, visibly shaken, tried to respond, but Linda raised her hand to cut him off. She stormed away, leaving the man standing there, staring at the floor. Emma was at his side immediately. "Harold, what happened?" Harold sighed, running a hand over his face. The East Wing elevator jammed again. "I told management months ago we needed new parts, but all they send me are patchwork fixes. Now it's all on me." Henry, silently observing the scene, saw the tension in Harold's shoulders and the genuine concern in Emma's eyes. "You know this isn't your fault," Emma said softly. "It doesn't matter," Harold replied with a sad smile. "They always find someone to blame." That afternoon, Henry decided to dig deeper. During a break, he visited the maintenance room, finding Harold working on the elevator's control panel. "Need a hand?" Henry asked, stepping closer cautiously. Harold looked up, surprised, then shook his head with a tired smile. "Unless you've got spare parts worth a small fortune, there's not much you can do." Henry glanced around, noticing the dilapidated equipment and lack of proper tools. "How do you keep everything running like this?" "Miracles," Harold replied bitterly. "I heard this place used to be great to work at, but now everything gets cut to save money. Except what keeps up appearances for the guests, of course." Harold's words lingered in Henry's thoughts. He remembered how much trust he had placed in Donovan and the reports he received. Perhaps he'd been too naive to believe his vision of a harmonious workplace was shared by everyone. Later, during dinner in the staff cafeteria, Henry noticed Emma was quieter than usual. He sat beside her, trying to start a conversation. "You care about everyone here, don't you?" he asked casually. Emma shrugged, poking at the food on her plate. "Someone has to. If we don't look out for each other, who will? Have you ever thought about bringing these issues up to management?" Henry probed carefully. Emma laughed, but it was a humorless sound. "Management? They only care about numbers. Complaining just gets you blacklisted." Henry felt a knot in his stomach. He knew the blacklist was more real than Emma realized. That night, Henry decided to act. Using a master key he had secretly kept, he discreetly entered Donovan's office during the quiet hours. The desk drawers were locked, but one had a loose latch. Inside, he found an envelope labeled confidential. Inside were several documents detailing budget cuts, ignored complaints, and, to his shock, a letter addressed to himself. "Mr. Walker, as requested, we've implemented the necessary reductions to increase the hotel's profit margins. We understand that employee welfare must be secondary to financial performance. We're confident our decisions align with your priorities." Henry read and reread the letter, feeling a mixture of anger and guilt. He had never requested such measures, yet his team clearly believed they were following his orders. Before he could process the implications, he heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, he returned the documents to the envelope and slipped out of the office, his heart racing. The next day, Henry found Emma alone on the rooftop terrace, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. She turned to him, hesitant. "Mark, have you ever felt like you're fighting something so much bigger than you?" "I have," he replied sincerely. Emma sighed, crossing her arms. "Sometimes I wonder why I stay here. But then I see people like Harold or the others, and I realize if I leave, who's going to be there for them?" Henry remained silent, admiring Emma's strength. He knew he had to do something to change the situation, but he also knew he needed her support to succeed. "Emma," he said finally, "what if there was a way to change all this? Would you trust me?" Emma looked at him, intrigued. "You talk as if you could pull off something big, Mark." "Maybe I can," Henry replied, his voice filled with renewed determination. The Willard was becoming a quiet battlefield, and Henry knew time was running out. He needed allies, and Emma was the key to his next move. The weeks at the Willard were becoming increasingly intense. Henry, still disguised as Mark, delved deeper into the hotel's secrets. Every conversation, every task, and every moment shared with the staff seemed to reveal something new and troubling. That morning, Henry was cleaning the windows of the main hall when he saw Emma being called by Linda. The supervisor gestured impatiently, and Emma, visibly weary, followed her toward the office. Henry knew he needed to find out what was going on, so he waited a few minutes before approaching. While pretending to adjust the cleaning cart near the slightly open door, he managed to catch snippets of their conversation. "Emma, you've been crossing the line," Linda said coldly. "This whole thing about helping other employees? That's not your job." "I don't see any harm in helping those who need it," Emma retorted firmly. "The problem is it's drawing attention. And if I were you, I'd stop before it costs you your job," Linda threatened, leaving abruptly. Emma exited shortly after, her eyes fixed on the floor. Henry tried to intercept her in the hallway, but she simply shook her head. "Not now, Mark," she said in a low tone before disappearing down the service stairs. That afternoon, Henry found her alone in the break room, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. He approached hesitantly. "Emma, I overheard what Linda said," he began. She looked up, surprised but not angry. "You shouldn't be listening to things like that, Mark." "I just want to help," he said earnestly. Emma gave him a tired smile. "You don't understand. People like Linda have the power to ruin us. I've seen good employees get fired for far less. If she decides I'm a problem, I'm out." Henry felt the weight of her words. Behind Linda's threat, he could see the rot in a system he, as the hotel owner, had allowed to fester unknowingly. "But you're not alone," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "If there's anything I can do, tell me." Emma hesitated for a moment, as if considering revealing something important, but she only shook her head. "I appreciate it, Mark. But some problems are too big to solve on our own." That night, Henry decided it was time to confront Donovan directly. After hours, he waited until everyone had left and entered the general manager's office unannounced. Donovan was seated behind his desk, reviewing paperwork, and almost spilled his coffee upon seeing Henry walk in. "Mark, what are you doing here at this hour?" Donovan asked, frowning. Henry removed his glasses and fake beard, revealing his true identity. Donovan went pale. "Mr. Walker? What are you doing dressed like that?" Henry stepped closer, placing his hands on the desk. "I want answers, Donovan. I've spent weeks as one of the employees here, and what I've seen is unacceptable. Explain why the staff is being treated this way." Donovan tried to regain his composure. "Mr. Walker, with all due respect, I've only been following what I believed were your policies. Cost-cutting, profit focus. Those are not my policies," Henry interrupted firmly. "I never authorized ignoring employees' needs. I want to know exactly what's been going on here." Donovan hesitated but realized he had no choice. "Linda has autonomy to manage the team. I admit I may have been negligent in supervising her. But the profit margins have increased, and I thought that's what mattered." Henry stared at Donovan for a long moment, his anger rising. "From now on, things are going to change. I want a full report on everything Linda has been doing, and I want every employee to have a platform to voice their concerns. And if you can't handle that, Donovan, I'll find someone who can." The general manager nodded nervously. The next morning, Henry decided to reveal part of his true identity to Emma. He needed her by his side to implement the changes he envisioned. He found her in the laundry room, folding sheets. "Emma, can I speak with you privately?" he asked. She looked at him, surprised. "Sure, Mark." "Is something wrong?" He waited until they were alone in the small storage room adjacent to the laundry. Closing the door, Henry took a deep breath. "Emma, there's something you need to know about me." She frowned, confused. "What is it?" "I'm not just an employee here," he began. "My real name is Henry Walker. I'm the owner of the Willard." For a moment, Emma simply stared at him, unsure whether to believe him. Then, she let out a nervous laugh. "Mark, is this some kind of joke?" "I know it's hard to believe," Henry said, taking off his glasses and putting them in his pocket. "But I wanted to understand how the hotel truly operated, and the only way to do that was to blend in with the staff." Emma remained silent, analyzing his every word. Finally, she crossed her arms. "If this is true, then why tell me now?" "Because you're different, Emma," Henry replied sincerely. "I've seen how you fight for everyone here, how you try to make a difference even when no one seems to notice. I want to change things in this hotel, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. Emma hesitated, clearly torn between distrust and hope. And what if I say I don't trust you? I'd understand, Henry said. But I promise I want to do what's right. And you're the only person here I believe can help me make that happen. After a long silence, Emma sighed. All right, Henry. But if you don't keep your word, you'll be just another person who's lost my trust. Henry nodded, knowing this was only the beginning. After the revelation, Emma took the entire day to process the truth. Mark, or rather, Henry Walker, the man she had shared confidences and dreams of a better work environment with, was not just another employee. He was the owner of the hotel, someone with the power to change lives, but who had also allowed so many injustices to unfold under his leadership. That evening, Emma and Henry met on the Willards' rooftop. The fresh air seemed to ease the tension between them, but Emma still kept her arms crossed, an invisible barrier between them. So, Henry, she began, her tone skeptical. If you really want to change things, where do you plan to start? Henry leaned against the railing, gazing at the Manhattan lights. First, I want to listen. I need to know exactly what's going on with each employee. I want to create a space where they can speak openly, without fear of retaliation. Emma raised an eyebrow. And how do you plan to do that without Linda or Donovan finding out? Because they won't make it easy. Henry smirked slightly. Do you think I spent these weeks as Mark out of curiosity? I've gathered enough information to pressure Donovan into cooperating. As for Linda, he paused, thinking. She'll have to face the consequences of her actions. But first, I need to ensure the staff is safe. Safe? You talk like we're at war, Emma said, her tone almost challenging. Aren't we? Henry countered. Linda is using her power to intimidate, and Donovan has turned a blind eye to everything. If I don't act, you'll all continue to be treated as disposable. That's unacceptable. Emma remained silent, assessing the determination in Henry's eyes. Finally, she sighed. If you want my help, then start by proving you're willing to listen. Invite the staff to a meeting. But let me organize it. They trust me, not you. Henry nodded. All right. Do it your way. The next morning, Emma began spreading the word about an informal but critical meeting. The staff was invited to share concerns and ideas to improve working conditions. However, she didn't mention that Henry Walker, the owner, would be present. The news spread quickly. Some employees were hesitant. Others were curious. Harold was one of the first to approach Emma. Do you really think this will make a difference? He asked, skeptical. If we don't try, we'll never know, Emma replied. But trust me, Harold. Something is changing. That evening, the hotel's basement, used as a storage room, was transformed into an improvised meeting space. Emma arranged chairs and tables while Henry, still in his Mark disguise, helped adjust the lighting. Slowly, the employees began to arrive. The atmosphere was tense. Murmurs rippled through the room as everyone waited. Emma stood and called for their attention. Thank you all for coming, she began. I know many of you have doubts and concerns, but today is our chance to speak openly about what's wrong here. Curious and wary eyes turned to her. Before she could continue, a male voice interrupted. What if Linda finds out? Or Donovan? I don't want to lose my job, said one of the waiters, clearly nervous. Emma nodded, understanding. No one here will be exposed. This meeting is for us. But there's something you all need to know. She paused, glancing at Henry, who removed his glasses and fake beard. A stunned silence fell over the room. My name is Henry Walker, he said firmly. I'm the owner of the Willard. I know many of you are shocked and maybe even angry that I'm here, but you need to understand one thing. I spent weeks as one of you to discover what's really happening in this hotel. And what I saw was unacceptable. Nervous murmurs began, but Henry raised his hand. Please, let me finish. I'm not here to justify myself. I'm here to ask for help. I want to change things, but I need your honesty to make that happen. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Harold stood up, arms crossed. You want our honesty? Fine. Here it is. Linda treats us like garbage. Donovan doesn't care, and the budget cuts you made left us with broken tools and no support. Is this how you care for your staff? Henry listened silently, nodding. You're right, Harold. I failed, but I'm here to fix it. That's why this meeting is so important. Other employees began to speak up, hesitant at first, but soon their voices united in a chorus of complaints and requests. Emma watched beside Henry, surprised by the intensity of emotions being expressed. The meeting lasted hours. In the end, Henry made 3 promises: an investigation into Linda's conduct, an emergency budget to repair equipment, and a complete review of working conditions. I won't promise anything I can't deliver, he said sincerely. But I promise this is just the beginning. Later, as they cleaned up the room, Emma turned to Henry. Do you think they believed you?
I don't know, he admitted.
But at least now they know they're not alone. Emma gave a faint smile. That's a good start, Henry. Let's see if you can follow through. Henry knew the challenges were just beginning. Linda and Donovan wouldn't back down without a fight, and the employees still needed concrete proof that changes were coming. But for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. The following day after the meeting, Henry was ready to take the first steps toward the promised changes. However, he knew he had to tread carefully. Linda and Donovan were clear obstacles, and there was also the risk that the employees still didn't fully trust his intentions. Early in the morning, he summoned Donovan for a private meeting. As the manager entered the office, his footsteps echoed on the marble floor, and the tension in the air was palpable. Donovan, let's get straight to the point, Henry began firmly. I already know everything that's happening here. From neglected equipment to how Linda has been treating the staff. Donovan swallowed hard but tried to maintain his composure. Mr. Walker, Spare me the excuses, Henry interrupted, fixing his gaze on the manager. You have 2 options. Either you cooperate with me to fix this, or I'll have your resignation letter on my desk today. Donovan hesitated, clearly torn between pride and fear. Finally, he lowered his head. What do you need me to do? First, you'll suspend Linda. Meanwhile, I'll conduct an internal investigation into the allegations against her. Second, I want you to oversee the allocation of a new budget to repair all the equipment and ensure employees have the resources they need. Donovan nodded slowly, but his expression revealed that he knew his time as general manager was nearing its end. Understood, Mr. Walker, he said, leaving the office without looking back. Hours later, Henry was in the staff cafeteria when Linda stormed in, visibly furious. She had just been informed of her suspension and went straight to confront Henry. Mark, or whoever you are, what kind of game are you playing? She snapped, crossing her arms. Henry stood, his posture calm but firm. This is no game, Linda. You've abused your authority for far too long, and now you'll face the consequences. This is ridiculous, she shouted, drawing the attention of other employees in the room. I did what was necessary to keep this place running. Bullying your team isn't keeping things running, Henry retorted. It's breaking the spirit of the people who are the backbone of this hotel. Linda opened her mouth to reply but was interrupted by Emma, who had been watching from afar. Linda, we all know how you treat people here, Emma said, stepping closer. And it's about time someone did something about it. The murmurs of agreement among the staff left Linda speechless. She cast a final glare at Henry before storming out, slamming the door behind her. Later that day, Henry and Emma reviewed financial reports and accumulated complaints that he had retrieved from Donovan's office. Look at this, Emma said, pointing to a report. These expenses seem inflated. Someone's been siphoning money. Henry frowned, examining the numbers. You're right. This looks like a scheme, and Linda might not be the only one involved. If you want the employees to trust you, you need to resolve this quickly, Emma observed. I know, Henry replied, but we need more concrete evidence. Emma thought for a moment, then suggested. Harold mentioned that Linda always had private meetings with some managers after hours. Maybe there's something there. It's worth investigating, Henry agreed. That night, Henry decided to put the plan into action. He and Emma waited until the hotel was quieter and headed to the conference room where Linda often met with her allies. When they arrived, the room was locked, but Emma found a spare key in one of the maintenance cabinets. As they entered, what they saw confirmed their suspicions. A folder with documents detailed suspicious financial transactions, overpriced contracts, and even records of complaints that had never reached Henry. "This is bigger than we thought," Emma said, flipping through the papers. "We have what we need now," Henry replied. "But if we're going to expose this, we need to do it properly. I don't want anyone innocent to get hurt." The following day, Henry gathered the employees in the main hall. He was determined to show that his promises weren't just empty words. "I know many of you still have doubts about my presence here and my intentions," he began. "But today, I want you to know that we are starting a new chapter at the Willard. Linda has been suspended, and investigations into her practices are underway. Additionally, steps are being taken to address the problems you faced." The employees exchanged surprised glances, but some, like Harold, seemed cautiously hopeful. "I also want you to know that any of you can come to me or Emma with concerns or suggestions. This hotel won't just be a place to work. It'll be a place where you are valued." The room was silent for a moment until Harold stepped forward. "If you really follow through, Mr. Walker, you can count on me," he said with a slight smile. Others began murmuring in approval, and Henry felt that, finally, something was shifting. Behind the scenes, however, he knew the battle was far from over. Linda remained a threat, and the financial schemes he had uncovered might involve people more powerful than he had anticipated. But for the first time, Henry felt he wasn't alone. He had Emma by his side and was slowly earning the trust of his team. And this was only the beginning. The following days were intense for Henry and Emma. With Linda suspended and Donovan under close watch, the atmosphere at the hotel began to shift. Some employees were still skeptical, but others, like Harold, started to feel a glimmer of hope. However, what Henry and Emma found in the folder from the conference room not only confirmed Linda's abusive practices, but also revealed something far more serious: a resource misappropriation scheme involving fictitious and inflated contracts. Donovan's name appeared in several suspicious transactions, but there were also references to external parties, complicating the investigation further. "This isn't just internal corruption," Emma said as she reviewed the documents beside Henry in the makeshift office he had set up in the basement. "There are people outside the hotel profiting from this. And if it's bigger than we think, we might not be able to contain it." Henry rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the situation. "We'll go as far as we can. I've ignored what was right in front of me for too long. Now it's time to act. If Linda finds out we're digging into this, she'll try to take you down," Emma warned. "She's already tried," Henry replied. "Now it's my turn." That night, Henry decided to confront Donovan again. He waited until the end of the day and called him into the main office for a private meeting. "Donovan, we know Linda didn't act alone," Henry began bluntly. "There are inflated contracts and missing funds, and your name appears in multiple reports." The general manager visibly paled. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, avoiding Henry's gaze. "Don't lie to me," Henry shot back, tossing the papers onto the desk. "Here's the proof. If you confess now, I might consider leniency. But if you lie, you'll face the consequences." Donovan remained silent for a long moment before finally sighing and running a hand over his face. "Fine," he said, defeated. "I didn't start this. Linda brought these contracts and convinced me they were direct orders from your administration. She claimed it was to boost profits and ensure our bonuses." "You knew it was wrong," Henry said, anger evident in his voice. "I did," Donovan admitted. "But by the time I realized how deep it went, I was already too involved. Linda threatened to expose my role if I tried to back out." Henry took a deep breath, trying to control his frustration. "I want the names of everyone involved. And you're going to help me dismantle this piece by piece." Donovan nodded, resigned. Meanwhile, Emma worked to rally the staff and keep them motivated. She knew the hotel still faced challenges, but she also understood that Henry needed the team's support to confront Linda and the others involved in the scheme. During a break in the cafeteria, Harold approached Emma with a concerned expression. "Do you think all this will work?" he asked. Emma offered a reassuring smile. "It will, because this time we actually have a real chance. And Henry seems determined not to let us down." "I hope you're right," Harold replied. Elsewhere in the hotel, Linda was not taking her suspension quietly. Using her connections, she began investigating Henry and Emma's movements. When she found out Donovan had cracked, she decided to act swiftly. The next morning, Henry was hit with a notice from a lawyer representing Linda. She claimed her suspension was illegal and that she had been unfairly accused. "This is a direct attack," Emma said as she stood beside Henry, who was reading the document. "She's desperate," Henry replied. "She knows she's losing control." "Even so, we need to be cautious," Emma warned. "She might try to use this to divert attention from what's really going on." "Let her try," Henry said firmly. "The more she fights, the more she reveals herself." As the day progressed, Henry and Emma began devising a plan to expose the entire scheme. They decided to organize a meeting with key staff members, including Harold and other team leaders, to share their findings and unite efforts. The meeting took place in the events hall, with the doors locked to prevent interruptions. Henry stepped onto an improvised stage and began speaking. "I know many of you still have doubts about what's happening here," he said. "But it's time for everyone to know the truth. This hotel has been the victim of a scheme involving not just negligence but outright corruption." He presented the documents proving the suspicious transactions, inflated contracts, and misappropriation of funds. "I'm not here to apologize for what happened because I know that doesn't fix the problems. I'm here to ensure that those responsible face the consequences and to create a workplace where you are respected and valued." The staff was shocked, but many began to applaud, seeing a strength in Henry that had seemed non-existent before. Emma watched from the corner of the room, proud of the progress he had made. But Linda wasn't going to back down so easily. That night, as Henry reviewed the next steps in his office, he received an anonymous call. "Walker," said a woman's voice. "You think you can take me down that easily? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Henry felt a chill run down his spine. "Linda? Let's just say this hotel has secrets you can't even begin to uncover," she continued, her tone menacing. "And if you keep going down this path, it might be you who ends up exposed." The call ended before Henry could respond. He placed the phone on the desk, taking a deep breath. Linda was clearly willing to do whatever it took to protect herself. But Henry knew he couldn't back down. "She just made a big mistake," he said to himself. The battle was far from over. Linda's call echoed in Henry's mind. He knew her warning wasn't an empty threat. Linda was calculating, and if she had something to use against him, she wouldn't hesitate. But what could it be? For years, he had blindly trusted his administrative team, and now that trust was being turned into a weapon against him. The next morning, Emma found Henry in the makeshift office, sporting dark circles under his eyes and a pile of documents scattered across the desk. "You look terrible," she said, closing the door behind her. "Linda called last night," he said bluntly. "She claims she has something against me. I have no idea what it could be, but we need to act quickly before she makes it public." Emma frowned. "What do you think she has? Something related to the hotel or your personal life?" "If it's about the hotel, it might be an administrative error she wants to use as leverage. If it's personal..." Henry hesitated. "I don't know. She could be bluffing, but we can't take that chance." As Henry and Emma discussed strategies, a member of the IT team, Jake, entered the room looking concerned. "Mr. Walker and Emma," he began, hesitating. "I found something you need to see." Jake placed a laptop on the desk and opened a file that he said had been hidden on an old hotel server. It contained a series of emails exchanged between Linda and an outside company responsible for maintenance and renovations. "Look at this," Jake said, enlarging one of the emails. Linda was siphoning money into personal accounts, but more than that, she was trying to link Mr. Walker's name as a beneficiary. Emma's eyes widened. She was trying to frame him. "That explains the threat," Henry said through clenched teeth. "She knew I never reviewed those contracts personally. Now she can use this to make me look complicit." "We can prove you didn't know," Emma said, trying to stay calm. "These emails are evidence she manipulated everything." Henry turned to Jake. "Can you trace where these emails were sent from?" Jake nodded. "I'm working on it, but I'll warn you, Linda didn't leave an easy trail." "Do what you can," Henry said. The next day, an anonymous report was published on a local news site. The article alleged that the Willard was involved in corruption and employee exploitation, claiming that hotel owner Henry Walker was one of the beneficiaries of fraudulent contracts. The news spread quickly among employees and guests. In the break room, murmurs of disbelief and concern filled the air. Harold approached Emma, holding his phone with the article open. "Did you see this? It looks like he's been deceiving us all along," Harold said, his expression tinged with disappointment. "Don't jump to conclusions," Emma replied, trying to calm him. "This doesn't sound like something Henry would do. He's trying to help, not harm." "I hope you're right," Harold said. Henry called an emergency meeting with Emma, Donovan, and Jake. He knew he needed to act fast to clear his name while neutralizing Linda's schemes. "We need to be transparent," Emma said. "If we hide anything, it'll only look like we're covering it up." "I agree," Henry replied. "But we need more evidence before we make this public." "Jake, how's the email tracing goings?"
Jake shook his head.
"Still working on it, but it seems Linda used multiple external networks to cover her tracks." "Then we need another approach," Henry said. He turned to Donovan. "You said Linda had allies. Are any of them still around?" Donovan hesitated, but finally nodded. "Yes, she had a few managers who used to help her keep things under wraps. I can try talking to them, but I can't promise anything." "Do it," Henry said. While Donovan tried to convince Linda's allies to cooperate, Emma had an idea. If Linda used her name to sign contracts, she'd need access to specific authorizations. "And you mentioned she manipulated financial documents. Maybe she used the main office for that." Henry nodded. "Good thinking. Let's go through the old files. We might find something proving she forged my signature." They spent hours in the records room, sifting through piles of contracts and reports. Finally, Emma found a document with Henry's signature that looked off. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the signature. "It doesn't match your other signatures." Jake analyzed the document. "I can use software to compare this with legitimate signatures. If it's fake, this could incriminate her." With evidence in hand, Henry decided to confront Linda directly. He found her in the hotel lobby, looking confident, as if she'd been expecting him. "Walker," she said with a cynical smile. "Looks like you're in trouble." "Not as much as you are," Henry replied, holding a folder full of documents. "We have enough proof to tie you to embezzlement, forged contracts, and attempts to frame others. Your game is over." Linda laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. "You think that's enough? I know people who can bury you before this ever sees the light of day." "Maybe," Henry said, stepping closer. "But the difference between us is that I'm willing to fight for what's right. You just want to save yourself." Linda was silent for a moment before turning on her heel and walking away quickly. "She knows she's cornered," Emma said, watching from a distance. "But never underestimate what a desperate person is capable of," Henry replied. He knew the final showdown was approaching, and Linda would stop at nothing to escape. The days following the encounter with Linda were tense. Henry, Emma, and Jake worked tirelessly to solidify the evidence and prepare a comprehensive exposé of the scheme that had been corroding the Willard. Meanwhile, Linda grew increasingly absent, and Donovan, though reluctant, cooperated in dismantling what remained of her network of allies. That morning, Henry decided it was time to gather all the staff and present the truth. It was risky, but he knew that without their trust, his changes would fail. "Are you sure about this?" Emma asked as she organized the documents to be presented during the meeting. "Yes," Henry replied, resolute. "It's the only way to make it clear that there's no longer room for corruption or abuse here." Emma nodded, though she still looked concerned. "If Linda does something before this, we could lose everything." "She's already lost control," Henry said. "Now, all she can do is try to cause as much damage as possible." Meanwhile, Linda was plotting her final moves. Using the few contacts she still had, she gathered sensitive information about Henry's past. Despite his spotless reputation as a businessman, there were moments in his life that he preferred to keep private. She knew her only chance was to destroy Henry's credibility before he could expose her. To that end, she decided to leak this information to the press. "If I go down," she murmured to herself, "he's going down with me." That afternoon, the hotel staff gathered in the main hall. The atmosphere was charged with anxiety. Murmurs filled the room as everyone waited to see what Henry had to say. Emma opened the meeting with a brief speech. We all know that this hotel has been through tough times. But today, we're here to hear the truth and understand what's being done to make things right. Henry stepped onto the makeshift stage and took a deep breath before speaking. Thank you for being here. I know many of you have doubts and concerns about everything that's happened over the past few weeks. Today, I intend to clarify everything. He presented the documents Jake had analyzed, including the forged contracts, emails proving Linda's scheme, and evidence of her attempts to incriminate him. These practices were carried out by Linda with the complicity of others, including the former manager, Donovan. While I failed as a leader by not identifying this sooner, I never approved or knew of these actions. But that doesn't absolve me of responsibility. The room fell silent as he continued. I promise you this will be a new beginning. Everyone involved will be held accountable, and I will do everything I can to create an environment where each of you is respected and valued. Harold was the first to applaud, followed by other staff members. The growing support in the room filled Henry with renewed determination. As Henry earned the support of the team, Linda enacted her final plan. Using her last ace, she leaked an anonymous article exposing Henry's alleged dark side. The article insinuated that he came from a family with a history of illicit business dealings and that the hotel had been purchased with questionable money. The article spread quickly, and soon reporters began showing up in the hotel lobby, demanding statements. Emma was the first to see the news and rushed to inform Henry. She struck, she said, handing him her phone. Henry read the article in silence, his expression growing grim. This isn't over. You need to respond before this escalates, Emma insisted. I know, he replied. But we also need to prove she's behind this. As the chaos unfolded, Donovan appeared in Henry's office, visibly nervous. I don't want to be part of this anymore, he said, looking defeated. Do you know anything about what Linda's doing now? Henry asked. Donovan hesitated, but finally nodded. She told me about the article. She's the one who gathered the information and paid for its publication. Are you willing to testify to that? Emma asked. Yes, Donovan sighed. But only if it means I get a chance to clear my name too. You will, Henry assured him. That evening, Henry called a press conference in the hotel's main hall. He knew he needed to act quickly to contain the damage and expose Linda before she could strike again. Good evening, everyone, he began, facing the reporters with resolve. Recently, allegations have surfaced about my past and my conduct as the owner of this hotel. I am here to set the record straight. He explained the origins of the accusations and presented evidence that Linda had orchestrated the scheme, including Donovan's testimony. These allegations are not only false but were created to divert attention from a corruption scheme we are dismantling, he declared. A heavy silence followed until one reporter asked, Why should we believe you? Because I am willing to face the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, Henry replied. My priority is to restore this hotel's integrity and ensure this never happens again. As Henry spoke, the police arrived at the hotel with an arrest warrant for Linda, based on the evidence presented. She was found in a rented apartment, attempting to destroy the last documents that could further incriminate her. News of her arrest spread quickly, officially ending her influence over the hotel. With Linda out of the picture and reforms underway, the Willard began to recover. Henry, now unmasked, continued working alongside Emma and the staff to ensure the hotel became a place of respect and dignity for everyone. You did it, Emma said one night as they watched the newly renovated lobby. Not alone, Henry replied, smiling. This happened because I had you and everyone else by my side. Months passed since Linda's downfall. The Willard, once tainted by corruption and mistrust, transformed into a symbol of resilience. The reforms Henry implemented, with Emma's support, brought not only physical changes to the hotel, but also a new mindset. The fraudulent contracts were nullified, and the recovered embezzled funds were reinvested into improving working conditions. Equipment was replaced, salaries adjusted, and benefits like training and healthcare plans were offered. Most importantly, the workplace became more just and collaborative. On a sunny morning, Harold, the maintenance veteran, walked into the lobby carrying his tools, but this time with a smile on his face. Approaching Emma at the front desk, he said, "Can you believe they gave me the budget to replace the entire ventilation system? I can finally do it right." Emma laughed. "I think we're living in a completely different hotel, Harold." "Not just different. Better," he replied before heading off to work. Henry watched the scene from a distance, feeling a satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. He realized that running a hotel wasn't just about profits or luxurious guests, but about the people who made it all happen. That evening, Henry gathered the entire staff in the main hall. The space was adorned with lights and flowers, and a generous buffet awaited the employees. Emma, curious, approached him. "What's all this?" "Tonight is about you all," Henry said with a smile. "I want to thank everyone for sticking with me through this challenging time. Without you, the Willard wouldn't be what it is now." When the employees started arriving, Henry took to the stage for a short but heartfelt speech. "I know this hotel has faced immense challenges, many of them caused by mistakes I allowed to happen. But together, we overcame them. Today, the Willard isn't just a hotel. It's a place where each of you is valued because you are the heart and soul of this business." Applause filled the hall, and for a moment, it felt more like a family reunion than a corporate celebration. Later, while the employees celebrated, Emma found Henry sitting in a corner, watching the scene with a quiet smile. "You should be in the middle of it all," she said, sitting next to him. "I prefer to watch," he replied. "This is all about them, not me." Emma looked at him, admiring the transformation he had undergone since the day he introduced himself as Mark. "You've changed, Henry." "Maybe," he said thoughtfully. "But I think I've finally figured out what really matters. This place isn't just bricks and marble. It's about the people. And you helped me see that." Emma smiled, slightly blushing. "I just did what I thought was right." "You did much more than that," he said, holding her gaze for a moment. "You gave me a reason to do what's right." For a moment, they sat in silence, but there was something in the air, a connection that had grown stronger through the battles they had faced together. With the hotel running better than ever and trust restored, Henry decided it was time to delegate more responsibilities. He offered Emma the position of general manager, recognizing the crucial role she had played. "Me?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," Henry replied with a smile. "No one understands this place, and it's people like you do, and I trust you to lead it moving forward." Emma accepted, moved by his trust, and the news was met with enthusiasm by the team. One morning, weeks later, Henry decided to walk through the hotel unannounced, just as he used to do when he was Mark. This time, he wasn't in disguise, but he observed everything with the same attentive eye. He saw Harold adjusting the new fans, a housekeeper being helped by another staff member to change the bedding, and Emma, now in her new role, speaking to a guest with her characteristic kindness. The Willard was different now, but Henry knew there was still work to be done. He had learned that leadership wasn't about control but about empowering those around him. And as he stood by the window on the top floor, gazing out at Manhattan stretching before him, Henry smiled. Because, finally, he felt he had done something truly meaningful. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share the video. See you in the next story.